Well, that was the completely wrong graphic. How did I pull that off? Excellent. Well, now we got the right graphic on. From when we do the real show start, we'll have the right graphic in place. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. How y'all doing today? Today's going to be fun, answering a question from a viewer about what gear to buy. It actually just reminded me I probably should pull up that question. That would be kind of fun to do as well. So just give people a few minutes to move their way on into here while I locate that thing. Kurti, hello from Romania. Excellent. Hello to Romania. That is awesome. I've never been to Romania. That's one of those places I haven't been to yet. Surprising, because this is exactly the type of country that I like to go to. A little bit of old world, old school. I don't need that. I gotta come out and see that place sometime. I think it'll be a lot of fun. In fact, I'm very, very confident it would be a lot of fun. Is it gorgeous photographically, Kurti? Is it just one of those places you go, yeah, this is a great place to shoot? I'm sure I should visit it. See, Kurti's right. I should absolutely visit it. Why can't I find? Oh, that's right. I'm looking at the wrong page. Yeah, I know it's fantastic. Stuart, good morning to Gulf Breeze, Florida. Carlos, hello from Panama. Oh, how cool! I think that might be a first. Awesome. Well, welcome, Panama. That is fantastic. Fleming, hello from Denmark. Thomas Engstrom, still in Sweden. Where's your next stop, Thomas? Because you one of these days we're gonna have to chat. You have to tell me what it is you're doing. You're bouncing all over the place, but I know you said you're going to be there for a while. You're still going to be there when I'm there. But what is it? Where are you off to next? Tell me that. XT500C, good morning from Appleton, Wisconsin. Excellent. Zachariah is finally able to watch live. It's 12 Rome. It's 12:30 in Singapore. I know, it's like the keyboard just goes bleh, and then it decides to send. 12:30 a.m. in Singapore. Well, thank you for tuning in. Israel. Oh, this is so cool. When we actually go live, I got to go through all the roundups because we got some pretty broad countries in here today. This is really, really cool. Ooh, Kurti got his 15mm 1.7 lens. That's fantastic. Marvin in the UK. Greetings to you. Landon from Missouri. Missouri. My mom was from Missouri. That's why I know how to say Missouri. Let's see here. I've got to find this conversation. There we go. Now I've got it up. Excellent. Missouri from the UK, 50-something. I don't think I've seen your name come up before. Welcome to the show. Andrew, good morning from Salem, Oregon. Oh, look at that, a neighbor. Sean Mark Nicker from Ashland. No way, Sean, you're in Ashland? Oh, yeah, right. Sean's my friend. I know where Sean is. Thomas, his next assignment is in Los Angeles. Used to live there 19 years. Wow. LA is not as interesting as Sweden. I can promise you that. It's cool. LA's cool. No dissing on LA. It's cool. It's just, it's LA. All right, shall we start the show? Let's start the show. Look at a nice audience coming in today. Excellent. Let's do this thing. Let's do it. Good morning and welcome to PhotoJoseph's Photo Moment, the first live daily show on YouTube, on photography, on YouTube, every weekday morning, 9:30 a.m. Pacific. That's the plan. We try to stick to it. Greetings, everybody, and greetings, everybody watching live. And I just got to do a little shout out to everybody watching live today, because this is so cool. We have such a widespread audience today. We've got Romania, Florida, Panama, Denmark, Sweden, Wisconsin, Singapore, Israel, the UK, Missouri, the UK again, Salem, Oregon, Ashland, Oregon, and Shropshire in the UK, and then others. There are many more than that watching live who haven't commented in it. I love that. I think that is so cool. Such a dynamic global audience. Even folks in Singapore watching at 12:30 in the morning. Thank you for staying up. So today's show is a question. It is a question, and this show is going to generate other questions. So I'm going to answer the viewer's question. First, I'm going to read the question, then I'm going to answer the question as best as I can. But this is interactive. I want your opinions and feedback as well, because this is one of those questions to which there is no one right answer. This is going to be very much an opinion, and I want your opinion as well. If you have something to contribute, to share, when you type it into the comments, make sure you type @PhotoJoseph in front, then it shows up like that on my screen. See the bright red? That's just for me, so I know that you've got a question for me, and or a comment that I need to read, and I can see that and comment on it. There you go. If you have a question that is not related to the topic, hold on to that. We will come back after this portion of the show for commentary section. So if you got something unrelated to this question at hand, hold on to that. We'll do it afterwards. Let's get started with the question. The question came in via Twitter. And the chap's name is Jorge Vazquez. At least that's what it says on Twitter. It says, I'm about to purchase my first interchangeable lens camera, thinking about Micro Four Thirds. What would be your suggestion? And I said, I need more info. Then he said, I want to learn mostly urban photography, travel and lifestyle, and probably amateur portraiture. I asked for budget. He said around $1,000, including lenses, and points out I really don't like the DSLR shape factor. I prefer something more in style of the Rangefinder. So, Rangefinder, form factor, mirrorless camera, micro four thirds. Obviously, I'm recommending Lumix because that's what we do here. If you are unaware, if you're new to the show, you're unfamiliar with me, I am a Lumix luminary. I'm sponsored by Panasonic. Therefore, I'm going to recommend Panasonic gear. Not to say there isn't other stuff out there. There's all kinds of really, really awesome gear out there, but he has micro four thirds. I'm a Panasonic LUMIX guy, so that's what I'm recommending, and that's all there is to it. Okay, so $1,000 budget, landscape, travel, portraiture, is it right? Landscape? Urban photography, sorry, urban, travel, portraiture. That's the area. It's a pretty broad range. Yeah, and under $1,000. Okay, so let's do it. So first off, let's talk about the body. So I kind of already knew which way I was going to go, but I thought I'd pull up a few different options here. So if we start at the top, your GH5 too high end, right? That's $2,000 for the body alone, and that's way beyond what this fellow needs. This is his first interchangeable lens camera, and I think that's an important point. This is first interchangeable lens camera. He's not migrating from Canon, Nikon, whatever. He's probably migrating from either point and shoot or maybe even just the smartphone. He wants something bigger and better. So that's great. Now, one of the things we have to consider is anybody who is not used to carrying around a big camera, let's just call it a big camera, and by that I mean interchangeable lens camera, if they get something that's too big, you'll never carry it, right? If you go out, and let's just say that you go out and you go to Costco and you buy a big Nikon kit, and it's got a kit lens, and it's, it's like this big, and you're used to carrying this, or maybe something a little bigger if you're actually carrying a point and shoot, and suddenly you've got this, you're gonna never take it, right? It's too much. You're not used to this. I used to carry, it's ridiculous. I used to carry a Canon 1DS Mark III, which is the big, huge, with a big lens, and I carried that everywhere. The thing weighs like 38 pounds, and I carried it everywhere. And I kind of walk like this for 20 years of my life. It's too much, right? But that's because A, I'm a pro, and B, I'm slightly crazy. So that was a bit crazy. But then you get mirrorless, and mirrorless gets a lot smaller. But even within mirrorless, you get your GH5, which I don't have here, but you get your GH5, actually, is it right here? And it's a bit, yeah, here. It's a bit bigger, right? So let's get rid of the microphone. We don't need the microphone on here. Let's take that off. And you compare that to the GX85, and that's a significant size difference. Let's get that up there. You can see it nicely. Sorry, I don't have the close-up camera yet. Honestly, that will happen soon. The GH5 training thing is completely done. I'm not breaking the set down until the last edit is done, which will happen today or tomorrow, and then we'll know, and I can break it down. I can get my second camera back in here. Anyway, off topic. So big difference there. So you can still buy a mirrorless camera that's big. Now, obviously, the GH5, again, is out of budget, but it's also quite large, and I think that's an important factor to consider here. So interchangeable lens. What are you going to go with? So obviously GH5 we're not going to do. GH4, really great camera, cheaper than the GH5 considerably, especially you can get it used, but really beyond what this fellow needs, I do believe. So now let's get into things like the G85, the GX8, the GX85, and so on. So there's kind of mid-range mirrorless Lumix cameras. GX85 and GX8 and G85. We're going to focus on those three. Oh, and G7. Let's focus on those four. All really good, really capable cameras. So let's just hit price, because that's the first place to start. So we're going to start with, and I'm going to use B&H as my reference point here. We're going to start with the LUMIX G7, and let's see where we're at on price here. So $800 for this camera with a kit lens that is where's it say? Oh, here we go, the 14 to 42 lens, which is a pretty good lens. It's a nice range. That range is equivalent to a 28 to 84 millimeter lens. Remember, when it comes to micro four thirds, whatever you see on the box, you just double that. So if it says 25, that's 50 in full frame equivalent, and so on. So this kit right here, 14 to 42 lenses, to 28 to 84, that's a really good kit lens, right? That's a really good starting point. $800, that's going to get you the body, a really quite a good lens, and still have $200 to spare to buy, well, either another lens or invest in another lens to start saving towards another lens, or extra batteries and all the other stuff you need. And I'm not gonna go into, oh, well, you need these batteries. That's all stuff you add on as you go, but we're gonna focus on that first $1,000 approximately, so we can go a little bit over. He said approximately. We're gonna focus on that first main camera and lens purchase. Okay, so this is a really good option. It is a little bit more DSLR style body, right? It's got what appears to be a pentaprism. It's not, obviously, but it's got what appears to be. So this does look more like a traditional DSLR. Oh, sorry, you're not looking at this here. This does look more like a traditional DSLR. So this is while a very, very good camera, I actually really enjoyed the G7 when I was playing with that. My switcher is freaking out on me. My software keeps crashing here. I used this camera for a while. I really liked it. It's very, very lightweight. It actually feels, I remember when I first took the G7 out of the box, it was so lightweight that I thought, oh, this is like almost toy-like. But then once I got to use it, I really liked it. All the buttons and dials have a very good, solid feel to them. And it's really important, right? You want those clicks to feel really good under your hands. It feels like a quality camera, and it does. Even though it's super lightweight, it's a great camera. So I highly recommend this one. No, not necessarily the answer to this question, but I really like this camera. Okay, so that's one starting point. So keep that one in mind. Don't forget this one. All right, let's go back here. Now let's look at the G85. We're going to do that next. So G85, so now we're in a little bit more expensive. We're up to $1,000, but that's still within budget. It still has the DSLR style. It looks very similar to the G7. It's got that DSLR style to it. This has a slightly more advanced sensor. The sensor in this one of the big differences here is that this sensor does not have the anti-aliasing filter, which will result in slightly sharper pictures. And we're going to come back to this because that lack of the anti-aliasing filter is something that I personally really, really like. And this camera has that. Now this camera, the G85, with this kit it's got the 12-60 lens, which is an even better range of lens. So that's a 24 to 120 millimeter equivalent. So that's pretty sweet. You know, that lens right there is going to cover your full range. But one thing you do want to know is that this is not the new Leica 12-60. Right, if you're buying a GH5, you can buy the GH5 and you can buy the 12-60 Leica zoom, which incidentally, sidestep here for a little sidebar, the 12-60 Leica and GH5 was sold as a bundle in many, many countries, but not in the United States for whatever reason I can't explain. That has just changed. You can now get the GH5 with the 12-60 as a bundle. So if you are looking at the GH5, you haven't bought yours yet, you're thinking about that lens, you can now get it as a bundle and save, I don't remember how much, but it's notable. The price difference is notable. So super awesome. Thank you, Panasonic, for finally putting that bundle together. That's great. Okay, but this lens that comes with the G85 is not the Leica. So don't get crazy excited about it, because that 12-60 Leica is a really, really good lens. It's kind of surprisingly good. I didn't think I was going to like it much. I find that it is the lens that I use the most on the GH5 when I'm out and about shooting. I've put the 12-35 2.8 on here again, which was my, I don't want to say previous favorite for just general video shooting, but it's a very, very good lens for general video shooting. And I kind of miss the range of this when I have that on here, even though it's a variable aperture. So this lens is really growing on me, and I've said that a few times on the show. That 12-60 Leica is pretty sweet. Anyway, sorry, we're getting off topic. Let's go back to this guy. So this 12-60, same focal length, but it is not the Leica lens, so don't go crazy excited about it. But this is still a very, very nice setup, and it's within the range. Okay, so now let's go the other direction. Let's look at the GX8, which I honestly don't, it's a little bit older, but let's see here. Let's get the right camera up. Now we're getting a little bit more expensive. So now we're at $1,200, and that's just the body. Now this is a little bit more robust of a body. It is, its big difference is that the body has a 20 megapixel sensor. It is was the first Lumix camera to have the 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor. It might be the first micro four thirds sensor that's 20 megapixel from any manufacturer. I don't think Olympus did one yet. I don't think. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Anyway, again, great camera, gets that extra resolution. But here's something that is really interesting. So you've got a 20 megapixel sensor on the GX8, but it has the anti-aliasing filter on it. The anti-aliasing filter, by the way, eliminates moire in an image, but at the sacrifice of sharpness. You lose a tiny bit of sharpness with that. But this is normal. I mean, pretty much all cameras have an anti-aliasing filter on it, so it's not like it's taking away sharpness. This is just normal. If you take that filter off, you gain sharpness, but you also gain moire. If you're shooting something that's got a really fine pattern, just fine lines, a grid pattern especially, but even just fine lines like a Venetian blind kind of a thing at a distance, you might get a little moire happening. And that's what you're gaining. That's something you might end up getting when you lose that anti-aliasing filter. So just something to keep in mind. Personally, it's never been a problem, but I have seen it show up. Okay, so 20 megapixel on the GX8 with the anti-aliasing filter. And then you look at the 16 megapixel sensor that is on the G85 and the GX85, and that is a 16 megapixel without the anti-aliasing, and the effective resolution, which means the sharpness that you see at any given distance and yada yada, is the same between the two, between the 20 with the anti-aliasing and the 16 without. So I don't feel that you're losing. I feel like with the 16 megapixel sensor without the anti-aliasing filter, you're kind of gaining resolution. And 16 megapixel, while it seems small by many standards, that's plenty to. I've printed 30 by 40 inch, even 40 by 60 inch off of that. So it's plenty. But a lot of people get hung up on what it is. Anyway, so there's that. So 16 megapixel without the anti-aliasing is great. Just as a total sidebar, again, the GH5 is the 20 megapixel sensor without the anti-aliasing. So it's, again, a step up. Okay, so GX8, 20 megapixel with the anti-aliasing, higher resolution, really, really nice camera. But at $1,200, it's already over the budget, and we haven't even added a lens yet. Okay, so we're scratching that one off the list. So then the last one to look at would be one of my favorite cameras, which is the GX85, the one that I just held up for you. The GX85 is a brilliant, brilliant little camera. That's this guy here. It's tiny, super small and lightweight, and relatively low cost. So this is what, $800 with the kit lens. Unfortunately, this was just on a really, really sweet sale, but that sale is now gone, I'm sorry to say. If this question had come in last week, I would have been able to push you towards that, and there would have been no question on what to buy, but unfortunately you missed that. Anyway, this GX85 with the 12 to 32 lens, which again, I've mentioned here on this show, not a favorite lens of mine. It's quite a small lens. It's a limited zoom range, but it's not the greatest lens in the world. But I've had viewers say, you got to give that lens a chance. It's actually really quite good. So not from personal experience, but some viewers have said that they really, really like that lens. Excellent. Okay, so now you've got $800 for this body with a little lens. So now let's go back to this. Let me just add this view. So we're comparing GX85 with the 12 to 32 for $800, or let's go back into BH Photo, and it was the G85, which was $1,000 for the slightly bigger lens, a slightly bigger camera with a slightly bigger lens. Or let's do this one more time. Go to the GH5 and we go to the LUMIX G7. And now we're back to that $800 price point. Slightly larger body, slightly larger lens, larger focal length, larger reach. But it's got that DSLR style body. So how important is it to our friend who wrote this question, Jorge, whether you have this true rangefinder style versus the DSLR style? So that's something that only he can answer, right? Hello, there we go. It's only something that he can answer. I can't tell him that. Personally, I would go with the GX85 just because I love it so much. And then I would take that extra $200 and use that to start saving towards a more capable lens. So then you have to get into, well, what do you buy next? What's the lens that you buy next? So that's going to be the next part of this. Before I get into that, though, let me scroll down into the comments here and see what's going on. So Carlos is trying to help me with his name. It probably is Jorge Vasquez. Excellent, probably. Andrew Burns says, would you recommend for a photography class? Okay, we'll come back to that. Simbim is saying that GX8 was the first with that 20 megapixel sensor, but Olympus now has a 20 megapixel in their EM1 Mark II. Good to know. Thank you very much. And Joshua says, maybe if you can wait till Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Well, there's always sales, right? Sales are always coming and going. And that's a fair point. There's no big sale happening right now, but if you're not in a hurry and you can just bide your time, then you can always wait. When it comes to sales or just waiting, at some point you got to make a decision. And once you do, don't look for sales anymore, because when one comes up, it'll just depress you. Because it's inevitable. Something else is always going to go on sale. There's nothing you can do about that. Unless you buy from a place that will guarantee a price for a duration. I don't know. I honestly don't know if B&H does this or Amazon or anybody, but I know I've purchased from stores before where they'll say, for 30 days, within 30 days, if you come back and you say, hey, that camera went on sale 10 days after I bought it, they'll give you the difference back. I don't know. It's worth looking at. Simban is saying another point of the 12 to 60 on the G85 is that it's weather sealed compared to the 14 to 42. Superb point. The G85 is a weather sealed camera. So let's go back to that. Let me open this one up a little bit bigger here. So the G85 is weather sealed. So that 12 to 60 is as well. I did not know that, so thank you. I knew that the Leica one was, but you're saying that this one is as well, so that's good to know. Excellent, excellent for chiming in on that. Thank you. So that's another consideration if you're going to take this into inclement weather type of environments. Now that said, the whole inclement weather thing, it's worth pointing out that it's not like with a camera that is not technically weather sealed, you can't use it on a humid day. The camera will still operate fine. It's just if it starts raining, you got to cover the thing. Whereas something that's weather sealed, a little bit of rain, you're just fine. Even a drop or two of water is not going to kill the camera, but if it's raining, you got to cover it. If that's not a concern to you, you would never dream of going out in the rain to shoot anyway, then maybe it's not a concern. Weather sealing, by the way, isn't just about water. It also seals out dust, fine dust particles. So if you're shooting in the desert, then I would highly recommend a weather sealed camera for shooting in the desert. It'll just keep more of that crap that's flying around in the air out of your gear, and never change lenses in the desert. Okay, or in the middle of a sandstorm, or while a helicopter is landing overhead. Might have done that once. Anyway, let's see here. So there's kind of your lineup there. Anything else on here on the comments on that? And no, I think that's good there. Okay, so Tech for Your Needs is saying that the G7 4K is an awesome camera. It really is. All of these cameras shoot 4K video, worth pointing out. The G7, they're just all great. They really are. It's hard to, none of these are going to be a bad choice. Let's just put that out there. None of them are going to be a bad choice. Okay, so now your bodies. I think if you want to get that all-in-one kit and you want that kit to last you for a long time, then that G85 is probably the best place to go. It's a little bit bigger. If you can forgive the slightly DSLR style format, it's got a very good range lens. It is weather sealed, as has been pointed out. It's got the 16 megapixel sensor without the anti-aliasing, so this is going to be a very good, very sharp image. This is great, and this is a heck of a kit right here. At $1,000, I think it's a really, really good deal. If this body style, you just can't stand it, or for whatever reason you're not interested in that lens, then I'm going to say my next recommendation is going to be this, the GX85, sorry, with the 12 to 32, and then take that $200 that you've saved and put that towards another lens. So now what lens are you going to get? Now that gets a little bit harder, because now you're not going to find a lens for $200 that's worth buying, but you can put that $200 towards something else. And if you're willing to spend a little bit more in the beginning, then you can obviously start looking at something great. Okay, so let's take a look at lenses here. Before we do that, I'm going to throw up a couple quick things for you. Later on today, we are doing the Affinity Photo live training. I don't even remember what time it is, but it's later on today. You can check it out at photoapps.expert/live. And this is going to be a session on focus merging, so we're going to be playing with that in there. And also, don't forget that we have podcasts. The Adobe Spark podcast is the Adobe Spark was the latest topic of the last podcast. It's a Photo Apps podcast. You can see that at photoapps.expert. Just click on podcast, or you can look for these in iTunes as well. Excellent. All right, let's get back to the camera in here. There was my quick little house ad. Let's see here. Let's start looking at lenses. How do I want to do this? There's probably a way to do this. Here we go, lenses. And we're going to filter this down. We're going to look at mirrorless lens systems. And again, I am going to be recommending Panasonic lenses, but one of the beauties of Micro Four Thirds is that you have a lot of, hello, not Nikon, what are you doing there? A lot of choices of lenses from other manufacturers. Come here, Panasonic, there we go. So that's something to consider as well. Now I'm going to sort this from low to high, just so we can get an idea of what you can get for the money. So, okay, here's the 14 to 42, so that's only $250, but it's not, I mean, it's not worth adding that to the GX85. I think I'd save the money and move on from there. 25mm f1.7, it's a nice fast lens. This is not the Leica, but this is a nice fast 50mm lens, so this is your cheap nifty 50. That is a common phrase you'll hear, the nifty 50. 50mm focal length is a very good common focal length. This is pretty much what you see when you put the camera up to your eye. If you open this eye, things are going to line up at 50mm. 50mm at the full frame equivalent, so that's why this is a 25mm, becomes a 50, remember that. And this would be a really good, just everyday, fast lens. Nothing wrong with it, but I think you could do better. Okay, let's move on. We're going to skip the zoom because that's another, decent, but not, I mean, that's actually a pretty good zoom range right there, 45 to 150. That's a 90 to 300mm equivalent. If you need that long lens, if you need that long reach, that's something worth considering. But again, that's not what our user is looking for, so we're going to keep moving. The 20 millimeter, so this is a great lens, this 20 millimeter f1.7, tiny, tiny, tiny little thing. I think a viewer yesterday had commented that this is the lens that you can store in the crease in your camera bag. You got to fold somewhere, and then it's tiny. I don't have it here. It's a tiny lens. So that's a great, really inexpensive pancake lens. We call these pancake lenses. But that 20 millimeter focal length, if you're buying the GX85 with that little kit, you've already got that covered. So yeah, it's a little bit, maybe a little bit better than that one, but maybe not what you need. So let's keep on moving. What else do we get to? Another lens, 14 to 45, so another good zoom range. We're up to $300, doing okay there. 35 to 100 zoom. So again, if you want that longer zoom. So now we're getting, now we're getting into something that's a bit more interesting. This is a 70 to 200 millimeter equivalent. This is a tiny, tiny little lens, and it is really quite good, surprisingly good, honestly. For the $400, so now we're at $200 over our budget at this point, but at $400, this is a really nice lens. But here's the one that I wanted to bring up, because our viewer, our questioner, requester, our Twitterer, whatever, asked about portraiture. So this lens right here, I'm going to bring this one up. Not what you would immediately think of as a portrait lens, but this is a 60 millimeter equivalent. It's a macro lens, so $400, we're now $200 over our budget, but this is going to be a very, very versatile lens. This is at 60 millimeter f2.8, you're going to get nice shallow depth of field. At being a macro lens, you're going to be able to get very close to your subject, in fact, inches away from your subject, if you want to do that thing. So that makes it more versatile there. But a macro lens can be a really good, versatile portrait all the way down to macro lens. It's a bit bigger, and it will be a little more slower focusing because it has such a long range that it can go through. So it's not the fastest focusing lens on the market, but it's a really good lens. So that is where I would recommend you look at if you're really interested in portraiture. So you've got that 12 to 32 to cover your kind of general range of landscapey, bouncing around town, street photography kind of lens, and then check out that macro. I think that would be a really good next choice. If that completely doesn't interest you, well then that's fine. Let's go see what's next on the list. And then we're going to stop because we are getting higher in the cost here, and so now we're going to be getting out of range pretty quickly. This, if you wanted to go specifically for portraits, forget about the macro, get a little bit longer reach for the same money, so $398, exact same money, that brings you up to the 42.5 millimeter f1.7. So now you've got a bit longer range. This is an 85 millimeter lens versus the 60. So this is really getting into, this is pretty much just for portraits or those long off landscapes. But at f1.7, you are considerably brighter. That is going to be a bit of a faster lens, shallower depth of field. Plus, this lens is really, really good. Well, star ratings, that one's got 5 stars, this got 4.5 stars. They're both doing really well here on B&H. And personally, I can say that these are both very, very sharp lenses. This is not the Nocticron, right? You can spend, 6 times this money or 5 times this money or something to get the Nocticron version, which is an insane lens. But this one right here, that 42.5, 1.7, is fantastic. It is a really, really good buy. And that I actually have right here. So these last 2 lenses, just to bring them up for you, there's the macro, there's the 30 mm macro, and there's the 42.5. So very, very similar sizes, both quite small, very lightweight. Literally stick these in your pocket if you need to, and these will pair up very nicely with the GX85. So I don't have that little 12 to 32. It's actually Ryan's got it. I didn't think to ask him to bring it in, but it's on the G7 that he's using. But there's a fantastic little portrait kit, and then that 12 to 32 on there is going to be quite short, quite little stubby guy. So I think that's a really good kit. So if you don't want to do the G85, which is probably the best bet for you as far as the most versatile, if you don't want to do that, then I would go for the GX85 with either this lens, the 42.5 1.7, or the 30 mm macro. And that is where my recommendation is going to stand. All right, let's see what else is going on in the comments, see if there's any other comments about this specifically, and then we'll move on to the commentary section of the show. Let's see here. Let's go to, here we go. Dave Cox says, which of the cameras you've mentioned so far would you suggest as the best B camera for video work to accompany my main GH5? I know the G7 is very popular as a second. Actually, the G85 may have replaced that as the most common popular second camera for video shooters. I don't own the G85. I've never used one, so I can't say on that specifically. I know the G7 is great. They both have audio input, but if it's B camera, that may not matter. They both, of course, shoot 4K. Neither of them are going to shoot 4K 60p, right? And neither of them are going to shoot native 24p. For that, you have to get into the GH. But if you don't need those, I think either one of those would work. Probably the G85 for the weather sealed advantage. That's probably where I'd go now. I would have recommended the G7 before, but I think the G85 is probably the recommendation. So B camera for your GH5, probably the G85. I think that's fair. Anybody else has a different opinion, let me know, but I think that's pretty fair. Simban is saying the G85 EVF is better than the GX85. Okay, I love the GX85 for its size, but anyone that asks, I always point them to the G85 if they can afford it. Interesting, thank you for sharing that. So the EVF, he's talking about the electronic viewfinder, bigger and better on the G85. Fair enough, physically larger camera. For me, for travel photography specifically, if I don't need the power of the GH5 and I'm traveling, this is the one that I'm going to take because it is so small and compact. I have said many, many times before on this show how much I love this camera, and that stands. Absolutely adore this camera. Really, really nice. But that's a great observation, and obviously everybody's got their own thoughts towards it, and that's why we do this live. Let's see here. Simben also says, I have a GX85. The only reason I don't switch to the G85 is because I love the tilting EVF, and the extra crop ability of the 20 megapixel versus 16 is useful in macro photography. So what he's talking about, Ryan, if the GX8 is out there anywhere, I think it's sitting on the coffee table. Could you grab that? It has a tiltable viewfinder, which I gotta admit, I really like. I wish more cameras had it, but I guess it's a, I don't know, physical accommodation space thing, but we'll see if Ryan can find it and I'll show it to you. The LCD viewfinder tiltability on the GX85, it just does this. It flips out. Let's get rid of this. It just flips up like this or down, right? You can go down, so you can go overhead, flip it like this. I like this a lot because I can do this, right? I can hold this kind of rangefinder style down. Super, thank you. I can hold this kind of rangefinder style pointing down waist level like this. And I love that. And because it's not sticking out to the side, it just makes the whole thing more compact. If you take, well, I'll use the GX85 for this. This viewfinder, yes, you still get the tilt down capability, but you have to, right, open this up and tilt it out. So now it's like this, your profile's like this. And I still, I'll hold it like this and kind of hide the LCD panel against my wrist, which is great. But I really like this. This is really, really nice. If you like shooting waist level, this is a beautiful thing. The G85, I'm assuming, since I don't have one, I don't remember. Let's take a quick look at this. There we go. I'm assuming, yeah, it is the swing out style LCD. So if you really like the idea of this just pop up like this, then that's the G85. Now what Simben was talking about, this is the let's close this, the tiltable viewfinder. I really like this as well. I like to be able to do this. I like to shoot like this. I really, really do. So I wish that more of the cameras had that because it is so neat. If this had that, that'd be great. If the GH5 had that, that'd be great. But they don't. So, and I don't know why. I have absolutely no idea why. But I do like that feature. So that's something else to consider. Some people really like that. I know that I do. It's a neat feature. And let's see here. What else? Kevin asks, what's your choice for the fastest Panasonic lens for video? What do you mean by fast? You're talking fast autofocus, fast as far as aperture? Tell me what you mean by fast. Simben says the G85 is basically a GX85 and a G7 body, but weather sealed like a GX8. Isn't that funny? It's like, take this and that and this, put it together and make a little Frankenstein, and it's beautiful and it lives. That's true. The G85 is this camera sensor in the G7 body, which I don't have, with weather sealing, which is what this camera had. The weather sealing can be handy. If you need it, you want it. Carlos says, do you think it is possible for the GH5 to, okay, let's save that. Hey, bring that question up again later. Don't forget, copy and paste that question in later for me. We'll do that in the commentary. Okay, Christopher's tried to say something, but he misspelled the name, but I got it. Christopher Pepe says, the thing that bugs me about the GX85 is battery life. I need 3 to go all day, and I'm still looking for AC. Love your lens selection. I use the GH4 for my B cam. Oh, okay, very good point. If you're looking for a B cam for your GH5, consider a GH4, right? You can get them on the cheap, especially used. So yeah, I said G85, which is still a great suggestion, but consider GH4s. That's a really, really good suggestion. Thank you for bringing that up. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Anyway, he's saying you need 3 batteries to go all day. That's fair. The battery on this is physically smaller. It's a smaller battery, less milliamps in it. It doesn't last all day, so you do need a few of those. but fortunately they're super tiny. They fit in your pocket. Like that one lens, it'll fit in the creases in your camera bag. So if you don't, as long as you don't mind having to carry around the extra batteries, it's still overall size and weight is still considerably less than the G85. I'm assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming the G85 is using this battery, which is the one that's in the GX8 and the G7. A few other cameras as well, I forget which ones now, but this battery became very, very common among the Lumix cameras. So that's a great battery. It holds a lot. I don't know, what is it? 1200, actually let's compare. That's 1200 milliamp. What does this one got in it? This little one is 1025 milliamps. It's actually not that much less. Interesting. But this battery lasts for a long time. Maybe there's something else about it. I don't know. Okay. The G85 in the US does not have the 30-minute recording limit. None of the Lumix cameras have the 30. Wait, no, is that true? Okay, now I need a Panasonic person to confirm for me. I want to say that none of the Lumix cameras have the 30-minute recording limit, but I could be wrong on there, so don't quote me on that. But EmaxTube is saying the G85 in the US does not have it, so that's good. Okay, let's see here. Anything else? Leonard's asking, which camera would you recommend for both photography and video? Any of these. Every single camera that I just talked about does both. If you're super focused on video, the thing to watch out for is if it has a microphone input or not. The G85 does not. The GX8 does not, I don't think. No, GX8 does not. The G85, I think, does. Let me put this back in here before I lose something and break something. Let's see here. Let's see if the G85 does. I'm sure it has to, right? Because that's a really important feature on there. Let's just take a look at some of these side pictures. Oh, and this has the pop-up flash, which is great if you're going to do off-camera flash photography, because this becomes the commander for that. Very handy as well. Let's see here. Can we see on there? It would probably be somewhere in here. I'm going to assume this has one. Oh, here, there's a better side view. We get a side view where we can actually have ports open. No, that would be too much to ask for. Okay, let's just see if we look at the description. Let's see here, specs, and let's go microphone, 1/8-inch microphone. There it is. Yep, it has an 1/8-inch microphone port. Okay, so that's very, very good. So the G85 is better for video, straight up video, because it's got that microphone input. That's something to consider, right? If you're doing video, serious video, you might want to have a mic input on the camera, which the little guy does not. That said, if you're shooting where you're not shooting an interview, you don't need that dialogue, you certainly can shoot video all day long on this camera and just not have good audio. And then you could always, in a pinch, record your audio externally. You know, if you had this camera and you go, oh my God, I have to shoot an interview, you could record it to an external recorder. Okay. Leonard's saying I got a bit mixed up. The GX85 doesn't have one. The GX8 does, but it's a 2.5 millimeter? Well, hold on. Okay, the GX85, that's what I just looked at. It says it's got an 1/8-inch microphone port. That's what we just looked there on the G85. The GX85 does not, right? I said that. You're saying the GX8 does, but it's a 2.5 millimeter. Oh, that sounds familiar. Where is it then? Is that what's under here? Oh yeah, you're right. Look at that. It's a microscopic. It is a remote/mic port, 2.5 millimeter. Oh right, I actually have an adapter for this. So I forgot about that. Okay, so this does have an audio input on it. Okay, good. Thank you, Leonard, for reminding me, pointing that out. Simben says, we're just keep going here. The G85 battery saving features extends the life. Also, it'd make a better B cam to the GH5 since IBIS is similar. Very good point as well. Excellent. See, so much information. Whoever's watching this, you're learning so much right now. Kevin says, what's your fastest aperture Panasonic lens of choice for video use on the GH5? That'd be the 12 to 35 f2.8. If you want a zoom range, you want a little bit of flexibility, I would go for that. If you're shooting primes, then any of the primes. The 15 millimeter f1.7 is great for video. The 25-2.8 is, or 25-1.7 is, or 1.4 is great for video. That's the Panasonic Leica lens. If you want longer, the Nocticron, a little slow focusing, so maybe not your best video lens, but if you want that sweet super shallow depth of field, that's great. If you don't care about autofocus because you're going manual, then you can look at something like that Xiongyi 25mm f0.95 lens, super shallow depth of field, all manual though, so you can't autofocus with that. It's just great options. There really are great options. But if you're looking for an all-purpose fast aperture zoom lens, then the 12 to 35. You're going to get shallower depth of field than you will with the 12 to 60 because the 12 to 60 is a 2.8 to f4, 5.6, 4. 2.8 to f4 lens. So you have to consider that as well. Okay, I think that's it. I think that is it. When Marvin says, what's the best sports lens for the GH5? The 100 to 400 Leica. If you want that much of a reach, that's the lens to have. I haven't compared autofocus speeds on it, but that's a good lens. I mean, people use that for wildlife photography. Obviously at a distance, you don't want to get too close to them running antelope. Wildlife photography is great with that 100 to 400. Sports might even be too long. You know, you've got your 35 to 100 f2.8, that's your 70 to 200 equivalent. You probably want more than that though. So that 100 to 400, yeah, if you're gonna do sports, that's the one to get. Okay. Let's wrap this thing up out of here, and then we'll go into the general Q&A, because I know there were questions that came up that were not related to this, so we will hit those. Let me very quickly, before I run away, remind you of this, the GH5 training, which is, of course, completely shot. My editor told me yesterday that he is halfway through the last chapter, that he's got to do the intro and outro, but those are easy. So the last chapter is nearly done editing. I approved, I reviewed a ton more videos last night. Those then go off to sound engineering, sound design, get the perfect sound. But yesterday I uploaded, let's see, what was it? The rest of chapter 3, which is just one errant video that was missing, all of chapter 5 and all of chapter 6. Those are now available. If you are an owner, if you already purchased the course, then you got an email last night telling you that those are now online. If you missed that email, you can go forth and download chapters 5 and 6 right now. If you were waiting for chapter 3 to be completed before you download, that is now there. And I'll probably get 2 more batches. We'll see how they come in from the editors and the sound engineer, but we'll probably get 2 more batches. So later this week, get another batch, or maybe on Monday, and then a little bit later the week, the final batch. But we are going to have everything done by Monday, ready to deliver. It just takes me still time to upload and so on. But we are on track for that very slightly revised, very heavily revised schedule. But it's there. So gh5training.com, and remember, it is going to be $100. It is on sale on pre-order for just $60, so 40% savings. Therefore, if you want to save that 40%, you got to do it quick, because it is about to go away. As soon as that last video gets uploaded, the price goes up to the full price. That's the way it works. Okay, let's wrap this thing up. We'll come back here in just a moment for the commentary. If you're watching live, stick around. If you're not watching live, click the button that's about to pop up on your screen to see the commentary section. Bye-bye. Welcome back to the PhotoJoseph's Photo Moment Show. This is the commentary section. We just had a really fun, long, not super long, but reasonably long. It was pretty long. Discussion about ideal Micro Four Thirds Lumix, obviously, camera kit to buy for under $1,000. Some really great suggestions from the live audience. So if you haven't watched that, go back and watch it, because that was cool. And this is just the commentary section on that. So any question is fair game. For those of you that had questions that came up earlier that I said throw it up later, now's the time to throw that question up. In the meantime, I'm going to scroll back here and see what I might have missed. Marvin was asking earlier about the best sports lens, and then he says for video, for sports video, I still think that 100 to 400 would do you. What I would do, because it's a pretty expensive lens, is I would rent it. Give it a try, rent it once, see if it does what you need it to do, if it's the right focal length, if it's fast enough for what you need, and see how that works out for you. If not, then look at something else. But that's what I would do. I would rent it and give it a try. It's a little bit spendy to just go out and buy and then go, oops, wrong choice. And Simbam is saying, honestly, the best sports lens would be the Olympus 40 to 150 f2.8, especially if your camera has IBIS so it can be stabilized. So you get a 300mm f2.8 equivalent. That sounds like a nice lens. So it's another good option as well. Not as long, right? You're not getting out to the 400, 800mm equivalent. Crazy long, but sounds like it's good to consider. Excellent. Thank you very much. Dave Dill Studio says, as I have dual IS on my GH5, when do you use E-stabilization for video in the GH5 menu? That is a fantastic question. I have it disabled. I have found that I prefer the look of stabilization without the E-stabilization. It's the electronic stabilization added to the mechanical stabilization almost feels like too much stabilization. I don't want it to be, if I'm hand holding, I want it to look handheld, right? If I want it to look like it's on a tripod, Well, I'll put it on a tripod. If I want it to look handheld, but obviously not be shaky, then GH5 with the built-in stabilization, physical, mechanical stabilization, and not the electronic is my preferred way to go. The other thing is when you put on electronic, it has to punch into the shot a little bit, right? Because the way electronic works is physically the sensor's moving when it's doing physical, but when it's doing electronic, then it's virtually moving the image around to keep it stable, which if it just moved it, then you would get black bars showing up in the top and bottom, right? So it has to zoom into the frame a little bit so that it has some wiggle room. So you do end up punching into the frame just a little bit when you're using electronic. For those two reasons, for that and the fact that I think it's almost too stable, I prefer to leave it off. If you had a, let's see, if you had a lens that was not stabilized, okay, so you've got in-body stabilization on the GH5, of course, but you have a lens that is not, and you find that it is not quite stable enough, then go ahead and turn it on. Then activate it. But for me, personally, I find everything on at once, stabilization of the body and the lens and electronic, is too much stabilization. So take that for what it's worth, give it a try on your own, but that is my personal recommendation. Let's see here. Marvin bought the GH5 training. Thank you very much for that. I do appreciate it. I know there's a question that I told someone to throw up again later, and I'm not seeing it. Let's see here. Maybe that was Kevin's question. I don't remember now. I'm just going to scroll back and see if I can find anything, because this is fun. This is fun. I'm having a good time with this. We talked about the B cameras in there. Linus says, hello, how are you? Well, I'm doing very well, Linus. Thank you for asking. And I am sure there's another question. Oh, well, maybe not. Okay, so that's that. Let's go back to the end and let's see what else is popping up. Where were we? Marvin says, your original topic question, as a newbie, I'd also include a monopod. Really? I wouldn't. It's too much like hard work. Carrying around an extra thing you got to set up, and I'm not a monopod fan. I know some people swear by them, and obviously there are times where you need it, but I'm just not a monopod fan. I'd rather just have the camera without anything attached to it. Easier to carry, more versatile. If you're shooting stills, you can go portrait. You can't do this with a monopod unless you got a head on it and then you rotate the head. Too much like hard work. I would just rather not. But that's me. If you think that a monopod is necessary and you like working with one, then you should absolutely use it. Jamie Baker says, do images transferred via Wi-Fi from the GH5 to the Panasonic image app result in a loss of quality? No. No, you're transferring the actual file, the JPEG file. You can't transfer RAW. You can only transfer the JPEG. If you want to transfer the RAW file, then you have to use a physical adapter, SD card reader. But no, there's no loss in quality. It's transferring the actual JPEG file. That's okay. I say that is my understanding. I have never transferred one, copied one physically, and done a difference algorithm on it. That would be the only way to know for sure. But in my experience, in my knowledge, my understanding, no, it's just transferring the actual file. It would make less sense for it to actually re-encode the JPEG to make it smaller. That would be bad. So no, I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's not. Okay, here was the question. Joshua from Carlos Mann had said, do you think it's possible for the GH5 to get a 48p frame rate in a future update? Technically, physically possible, yes. Will it happen? I don't know. But physically, yes, it should, because it can do 24. It can do 48, right? If you put it in VFR mode, if you're shooting 24 and you put it in VFR, you can get 48, but you're not going to get your sound with it. So, so there's that. Yeah. Technically possible? Absolutely. Is it going to happen? Not a clue. There we answered that. Zachariah Kazmani says, for macro lenses, how's the Leica 45 lens compared to the Pani 30 you mentioned earlier? Oh, that's a good question. Other than longer, the Panasonic one, the 45 millimeter Leica is a Leica, right? Yeah, it's a Leica lens, so it's a bit sharper. You do gain a little bit there. It is a bit sharper there. I don't remember the aperture comparison offhand. It is obviously a longer lens, so you don't have to get as close to your subjects. If you're shooting things like venomous spiders, it could be a good idea. I've used both. I've been very happy with both. I haven't done any kind of side-by-side comparison of them, but it is a Leica lens, so your expectation would be to get a little better image quality out of it. That's about all I can tell you. I haven't done a big side-by-side. Let's see here. Simbem says, what Panasonic camera do you think they're announcing in the fall? Even if I knew, I couldn't tell you. Come on. I'm hoping the GX9, all the photocentric features of the GH5 plus dual slots and an updated GX-like body for $1,600. Well, you have that all figured out. Sure. I have no idea, though. So I really don't know. KR7 says, I'm having trouble, getting foreground and background focus in landscapes with the GX85 kit lens. So any tips? Okay, so if you're, here, let's talk about this. This is a big topic, and we probably could do a whole show around this, but if you're shooting landscape or anything and you want a huge range of focus, in focus, right? Usually when we're talking photography, most people want to have shallow depth of field, but when you're doing landscape, usually you want quite the opposite. You want that flower in front of you to be in focus and the mountain in the back to be in focus. So the way that you get the camera to focus on all of that at once is to stop the lens way down, right? So that might be f16, f22, f32, depends on the lens. The problem is that when you do that, you're not using the entire lens, obviously. You're using just the center of the lens. You are absolutely not maximizing the sharpness of that lens. You're going to get a better quality image as you open up. So that's a bit of a drawback, a bit of a bummer. And if you're stopping it all the way down and you're still not getting the extensive depth of field that you need, then that lens it is not physically capable of giving you that much depth of field at once, given that situation that you're in, whatever the closest thing is and the farthest thing is that you want all in focus at once. It just ain't happening. Okay, so how do you compensate for that? How do you fix that other than going and buying a different lens? There's a technique called focus stacking. So you can shoot multiple photos. I shoot a photo of the flowers in the front and the horses in the midground and the mountains in the background, and then blend those together in Photoshop. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today with an Affinity Photo. We're going to be doing this demo later on today on focus merging, which is the same thing, focus stacking, the idea of taking multiple photos and stacking them together. Now, typically, when you talk about focus merging, focus stacking, it's usually reserved for macro photography, extreme macro, extreme close-ups of a thing. And you're talking multiple, maybe dozens of slices of an image, all at very, very narrow, shallow depth of field, blended together. That's what you normally think of, but it absolutely can be used for landscape stuff as well. Foreground and focus, midground, background, blend them together. So that would be a good solution. It just requires the camera to be on a tripod, and it requires you to not have a lot of stuff moving around. It's a little harder in landscape because trees are moving in the wind and so on. So this is probably going to require a fair amount of manual effort to put it all together, but look into it. Experiment with it. That could be a good way to do it. Let's see here. Let's go back to the comments here. Marvin, there we go, says, I shot some video of driving a Ferrari. You're driving a Ferrari experience. Aha, fun. And I really needed a pod, 5 minutes of video. My arm started to shake. Okay. I guess it depends obviously on what you're carrying. If you're carrying a big, huge lens, then you probably want that monopod. But again, it's all down to the user. It's all up to you. Personally, don't like the monopods, but there you go. Trevor says, do we have a theory as to why you can't transfer raw images using Wi-Fi? Yeah, my theory is that simply cameras, smartphones, haven't been able to do anything with RAW until recently, so there was no point to it. Now with iOS 10, and I'm sure on Android as well, you can now edit RAW files. These things are most powerful enough to do it. Panasonic simply hasn't updated the app to allow that yet. That's my theory. I haven't confirmed that, but I mean, that makes sense, right? Because there's no point in transferring a RAW file if you can't do anything with it, and you used to not be able to. And so there you go. That's my thought process. Scott says, agree with Marvin. If you're doing video, monopod is a lifesaver unless you want to do serious calisthenics. Well, there you go. So everybody's got their thoughts on it. Marvin says, what's the best method of extracting a still from video shot at 4K 60 FPS? Open it up in your video editor and just freeze frame out. Remember though, if you're shooting video, for the sake of video, you are probably shooting at a 180-degree shutter, which means every frame is going to have a little bit of motion blur because that makes the video look better, look smoother, look prettier. If you are shooting video for the purpose of extracting a still from it, either manually shoot at a much higher shutter speed, narrow shutter angle, or shoot in 4K or 6K photo mode, which is essentially video with the explicit purpose of extracting a still image from it. So automatically it defaults to that higher shutter speed to get you that sharper image. Very important thing to consider. If you're just shooting video in full-on video mode and you want to extract a frame, if there's any movement in there, you're likely to get motion blur in there because that's by design. You want that little bit of motion blur in video. It tends to make the video look smoother. Let's see here. Josh was confirming, yeah, if you want to transfer RAW without a physical connection, then use the in-camera Wi-Fi connection. For what? You can't, no, wait, hold on. To my knowledge, there's no way to transfer a RAW file from any of the LUMIX cameras to your phone wirelessly? If there is, let me know. I would love to know that. But as far as I know, there is not. Only the JPEG. But tell me. Joshua, please clarify. Bernardo Silva says, what do you think about the IQ image quality between the G85 and the GX85? Should be virtually identical because they are the same sensor. As far as I know, all the same electronics. And then obviously the lens is whatever lens you put on there. So they should be the same. Dave Del Studio says, do you have a GH5 color profile you prefer for shooting video if you're not grading in post? It depends on what I'm shooting. I will shoot in vivid if I've got something really bright, poppy, colorful. I have designed my own kind of slightly flatter, muted profile that I like that's, I don't know, I just like it. Or just shoot in natural. Natural, though, is really, if you're going to do a little bit of basic grading, natural is a good place to go. I really like vivid. It's high contrast and high color, so it's a bit much for a lot of things, but I like it. And then, and like I said, I've designed my own that's a little bit more undersaturated. Which, by the way, my custom settings, sorry, I don't know why this thing's pulling on me today. My custom settings profile will be available for download soon. That's going to be part of the GH5 training, but that's going to be accessible even to non-owners of the video class. So I need to actually get that up there this week so that it's ready by the time that video hits. When it says, go here to download, it's actually there. So that's going to go up soon. And that will include my color profile. Josh was saying, yeah, sorry, not to a phone, just to a computer for transferring the raw file. Yeah, okay, there we go. Stuart Schaefer says, purchased Affinity for iPad Pro 9.7 the other day. Excellent, have enjoyed using it. Excellent. Issue is editing RAW. Only way I found so far was using iCloud Drive, unable to import RAW from photos via the iPad. Make sure that you have updated to the latest version of Affinity because that was a bug that was fixed. It's been a few weeks though, because if you just purchased it, that should be there. That's interesting. When did you install it, Stuart? Because that was fixed a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, it had to be at least a couple, maybe it's only a week, but I think it was a couple of weeks ago. Bernardo says, what's the difference in DR, dynamic range, between the G85 and the GH5? Oh, no, I don't know offhand. The GH5 is the Mac Daddy, right? So that's going to be your best quality, best dynamic range, but I don't know. And I don't know if that's even published by Panasonic. That might be like a DxO Labs kind of thing. You got to look at the DxO Mark score and see what they have. I don't know if they've even tested the GH5. I'm sure they have. Simbem says, have you ever noticed that sometimes photos shot look brighter on the LCD than when you bring them into PP, post-production, I'm going to guess? What could be the cause? Oh, that's easy. So when you're shooting, whatever you're looking at on the camera here is the built-in JPEG, the embedded JPEG, right? When you bring that camera into Photoshop, Lightroom, Camera Raw, Affinity, whatever, you're starting with the RAW file. I'm assuming you're shooting RAW here. You're starting with the raw file, which means the look that comes out is going to be completely different than what was in the camera. Right now you can't, because the software has to do the raw decoding, it has to do its translating, it gives you what it thinks you want to see. This is why if you take a same raw file and you open it in 5 different raw decoders, they will all look different. The way I always explain this is think of it like ingredients and a chef. The raw file is the ingredients. I can give the same handful of raw ingredients to 5 different chefs and tell them to cook the same thing, and we're going to get 5 different things, right? It's going to be the same thing. It's going to be an omelet or a souffle or whatever, but it's going to taste a little bit different. It's going to look a little bit different because every chef has their own way of handling that. Same thing with the raw file. Every decoder, whether you're talking about Adobe's raw engine, Apple's raw engine, Affinity's raw engine, Capture One's raw engine, they're different. They are different, and so they will look different. So from there, you just have to adjust and tweak the file to get it the way you want. If you're talking about JPEGs, if you're just shooting JPEG, then it should look the same in camera as it does in the computer. However, you have to consider brightness and screen calibration, right? This screen that's on here, if you've got the brightness turned way up here and it turned it way down on your computer, then this might look brighter. So that's something to consider as well. Okay. Simba also says, I found that I have to raise exposure +1 to get the same look you saw on the LCD. So there you go. Shoot using the histogram, not using your eye. Don't look at the image to gauge exposure. Look at the histogram. Always. It's the only way to truly know. And then if you find that you're consistently over-gauging it, over-guessing, then turn the brightness down on your LCD. You might just have it cranked up so high that you're fooling yourself into thinking the image is brighter than it really is. This is why you buy these new iMacs, MacBook Pros, whatever, and they've got these insanely bright screens. If you're doing photo editing, you got to take the brightness down. You're fooling yourself into making you think the image is brighter than it actually is because there's so much light coming out of that screen. This is why the histogram matters so much. So much. J Diggity D says, what did you use before you used a Panasonic? I was shooting Canon. It's all sitting upstairs in shelves collecting dust. I occasionally use them for props. And Stuart's confirming you installed it just the past weekend. Well, that is very odd indeed. Just make sure that it is actually the latest version and up to date. You should be able to import RAW files and try a couple different RAW files. Maybe there's a RAW format that it's choking on, but Affinity should be importing RAW files from the camera roll now. That's the way it's supposed to work. And like I said, they fixed it. Curdy says, did you make the comparison between the SD cards? No, I did not yet do that. I need to buy them. I'm gonna have to spend several $100s to buy all these cards because B&H understandably won't loan SD cards, and that's just not something I've gotten around to yet. But I will. It's you know, that's going to be an expensive show to do. So, but I will do that eventually. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up there. I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted. I got work to do. Take care of yourselves, everybody. Have yourselves a lovely, lovely rest of the week, rest of the day, rest of the everything else. Do not forget that we are going to Mexico, and you should be coming with me. PhotoJoseph.com/workshops to Oaxaca, Mexico this October. This is a wonderful, 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 wonderful thing to do, place to go. It's going to be a lot of fun. You should totally come with me because we're going to have a blast. We're going to eat some good food, take some good pictures, drink a little mezcal. It's going to be a good trip. Come with me, join me. Check it out, photojoseph.com/workshops. You can see a video of the last one, sign up for this one, and off you go. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Take care of yourselves. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.